South Korea is dealing with another round of winter hazards. Heavy snow in some regions, sharp temperature drops in others, and the most dangerous part for daily life, black ice. When snow falls and then partially melts, roads and sidewalks can refreeze overnight, especially on bridges, ramps, shaded alleys, and around apartment complexes. For foreigners living in Korea, this is not just a weather story. It directly affects commuting times, transit schedules, airport access, and injury risk. Local governments and road authorities typically move into a higher response posture when snowfall overlaps with morning rush hour. Salting priority roads, deploying plows, issuing school or public facility advisories, and warning drivers to reduce speed and increase following distance. What to watch today is timing, precipitation, and temperature swings that create freeze-thaw-refreeze cycles. If you must drive, treat any wet-looking patch as potentially frozen, especially near intersections where cars polish the surface. If you walk, assume stairs and slopes are slick, keep hands free, and consider traction aids. For travelers, monitor flight and rail notifications early. Delays often snowball when de-icing, runway clearing, and inbound aircraft rotations stack up. Finally, treat official updates, municipal alerts, and the meteorological agency's advisories as the baseline truth. Social media can help you see conditions, but it can't tell you which districts are officially under warnings or where road treatment crews are deployed first. A new round of tariff uncertainty is back on the Korea-US agenda after President Donald Trump's remarks and follow-on reporting indicated moves toward reimposing higher tariffs, reported as a shift from 15% back to 25% on certain Korean goods, including autos and other key export categories. For foreign residents, the practical question is not only will prices rise, but also which industries face near-term disruption. Korea's export engine is heavily tied to autos, parts, advanced manufacturing, and increasingly strategic supply chains. Tariff swings can quickly change investment decisions and production planning, even before a policy is fully enforced. Korean officials have been emphasizing continued negotiations and faster domestic steps, including legislation designed to reassure U.S. counterparts and reduce friction points. What matters next is the procedural timeline in the U.S., including formal publication steps, and Korea's political capacity to move quickly through the National Assembly. If tariffs are raised, the first impact often appears in corporate guidance, cautious outlooks, delayed hiring, and wait-and-see capex decisions. In the consumer economy, the effect is usually indirect and slower, but still real. A weaker export outlook can pressure the currency, shift inflation expectations, and dampen sentiment. For travelers and expats, monitor headlines about autos, shipping, and large manufacturers, because transport and logistics schedules can become more volatile when trade policy changes. In short, this is a diplomacy story with a business clock. Every ambiguous statement creates risk premiums, and risk premiums raise costs. Korea's housing policy debate is heating up again, with political leaders signaling tougher posture toward multi-homeowners and emphasizing compliance. Selling extra homes, normalizing ownership status, and reducing speculative demand. In reporting today, the messaging is framed as a last chance window, a period for multi-homeowners to dispose of properties before stronger tax or regulatory pressure returns. For foreign residents, the relevance depends on your status. Renters watching deposit and monthly rent trends, or long-term residents considering buying. Policy signals can shift market psychology quickly. If owners believe taxes or enforcement will intensify, listings can rise. If they believe the government will pivot to stimulus, prices can firm. Another key layer is supply. Follow-up measures and package announcements around housing construction, redevelopment, and financing support can reshape expectations, but effects arrive with a lag. What to watch is not just the headline, but the mechanism. Will the government lean on taxation, loan rules, or administrative enforcement? And will local governments align? In the near term, expats should treat this as a volatility story rather than a single direction move. If you plan to renew a lease, watch your neighborhood's listing volume. If you plan to buy, watch mortgage conditions and rate movement, because financing constraints often determine real demand more than media buzz. Housing in Korea is not only a consumer issue, it is political capital. As the administration tries to balance affordability, construction sector stability, and household debt, the policy mix can change quickly, and renters and buyers feel those shifts first in contracts, not speeches. Korea's January exports reportedly posted a record for the month, driven by a strong rebound in semiconductors. A reminder that the country's external engine is still powerful even when domestic sentiment feels mixed. For foreigners in Korea, this matters because export performance shapes currency moves, job markets and manufacturing hubs, and government policy space. When chips lead, the benefits ripple through suppliers, logistics, equipment makers, and regional economies linked to industrial clusters. But there is also a risk angle, concentration. A semiconductor-led surge can mask weakness in other categories, and it can increase vulnerability to global demand shocks, tech cycle swings, or geopolitical controls. The key questions going forward: is the semiconductor upswing broad-based, memory and logic, server and consumer, or narrow and inventory-driven? And can Korea sustain momentum if external uncertainties like tariffs rise? Policymakers often cite export strength to justify stability measures, support for strategic industries, infrastructure investment, and targeted financing. For residents, the near-term impact shows up in the won exchange rate and in the mood of corporate Korea. Stronger earnings expectations, more hiring plans in certain sectors, and renewed capex discussions. But it's not uniform. Service industries and small businesses may not feel the export boom directly. That gap is the story: a strong outward-facing economy with uneven internal transmission. Watch whether export headlines translate into wage growth, consumer confidence, and broader employment. If not, the government may face pressure to add domestic demand support, even while exports look healthy on paper. While exports grab headlines, a different signal is flashing inside the country. Retail sales excluding autos reportedly dropped to the lowest level in 4 years. For foreigners living in Korea, this connects to everyday observations: empty weekdays in shopping districts, discount-heavy promotions, and small business stress. A retail slowdown can reflect multiple pressures at once: high interest rates hurting household budgets, sticky living costs, weaker confidence, and uneven wage growth. It also changes policy priorities. When consumption softens, governments often pivot toward measures that support households and small merchants: temporary subsidies, tax relief, or targeted credit programs, though effectiveness varies. The key for residents is what a retail slump implies for services: more competition for customers, price wars in some categories, and cautious hiring in restaurants, cafes, and local retail. For those working in Korea, this can affect job openings in consumer-facing industries. For travelers, it can mean more value deals, but also shorter operating hours in some areas. Another factor is the psychological feedback loop. When people hear sales are down, they often delay discretionary spending, which deepens the trend. Watch for whether the data triggers new government messaging about reviving domestic demand, and whether banks or credit card companies adjust lending posture. In short, today's retail indicator is a reminder that Korea's economy can look strong from the outside while feeling tight on the inside, and that gap is where policy, politics, and daily life collide. Korea's political parties are already positioning for the June local elections, and today's reporting highlights how candidate controversies and last-minute decisions can reshape strategy. Local elections in Korea matter far beyond city halls. They influence budget priorities, development projects, transportation planning, and the political momentum heading into national-level contests. For foreigners, the key is practical spillover. Construction timelines, local regulations, and public service priorities can change depending on which coalition controls major local governments. The immediate storyline is candidate turbulence, allegations, vetting disputes, and the optics of withdrawal or replacement. Parties try to frame these moments differently, either as accountability, we corrected fast, or as proof of incompetence, they failed basic checks. In the background, each camp is calibrating its message for swing voters: housing affordability, jobs, inflation, and public safety. Watch for whether parties centralize candidate control or allow more local autonomy. Korea often sees tension between national party leadership and regional organizations. Another thing to track is turnout drivers. Local elections can have lower turnout than presidential contests, so mobilization and scandal narratives can matter more than policy detail. For expats and travelers, the most relevant angle is governance continuity. Will city-level services stay stable? And will redevelopment or transport projects face delays due to political turnover? Today's signals suggest an early, intense battle for narrative control. Because in Korean politics, who owns the story this week can set the fundraising and volunteer energy next month. Korea's agriculture ministry is facing an unusual problem. Too much soy record-level government stockpiles after policy incentives expanded soybean planting to reduce rice oversupply, but domestic consumption didn't keep pace. Today's reporting describes officials and the minister personally pushing use more Korean soybeans, including outreach to food businesses and public-facing promotion. For foreigners, this is a window into how Korea manages food security and farm policy. The government can steer production via incentives, but changing consumer habits is harder. The story also connects to prices and labeling. Korean soybeans can be significantly more expensive than imports, which limits uptake by processors unless subsidies or discounted supply is offered. The government is reportedly exploring ways to expand sales channels, such as the soybean oil market, and considering discounted release of stockpiled beans to industry. Another layer is upcoming labeling rules, which can shift consumer preference and potentially create premium demand for domestic crops. For everyday life, the immediate impact may show up in supermarkets and restaurants. New promotions, domestic ingredient marketing, and menu pushes. But the broader point is policy coordination. When one problem, rice oversupply, is addressed by expanding another crop, you can create a new imbalance if demand doesn't follow. If you live in Korea, you may see more domestic soybean campaigns in 2026, and possibly shifts in procurement for school meals and large-scale catering. It's not flashy news, but it is the kind of behind-the-scenes policy that shapes what's available, what's labeled, and what it costs in your daily meals. Today's forecast points to winter volatility. Cold air, periods of snow or mixed precipitation depending on neighborhood and timing, and the after-effect risks, refreezing and slick surfaces. For residents and travelers, the most important insight is not the exact snowfall number, but the hourly pattern. When temperatures dip below freezing after precipitation, road conditions can deteriorate quickly, even if skies clear. Expect the most disruption around commute peaks and late-night on early morning hours. If you're traveling, build buffers for airport transfers and long-distance rail. In Korea, short delays can cascade when de-icing, platform clearing, and traffic congestion overlap. For daily life, the safest strategy is to assume uneven microclimates. The same city can have different conditions by elevation, wind exposure, and shade. Use official alerts as your baseline, then check local transit notices. Also watch wind chill. Cold wind increases perceived cold and can aggravate health risks, especially for those not used to Korean winter. If you're new to Korea, layer clothing, protect hands and ears, and remember that indoor heating can be dry, so hydration matters. Finally, if a special weather statement is in effect, take it seriously. It's designed to signal hazardous conditions even when totals seem modest. K-pop fandoms care about charts, but this milestone is bigger than a brag. BTS member Jungkook has reportedly surpassed 10.3 billion streams on Spotify, profile totals, sustaining roughly millions of daily streams even during group hiatus periods. For global fans, the key point is durability. Streaming isn't just a launch week spike, it's proof of a catalog that keeps pulling listeners months and years later. Industry-wise, that kind of always-on demand changes how labels plan releases, tours, and brand partnerships. It also signals how K-pop's center of gravity has shifted. Individual members can now operate like full-scale global pop acts, not just as solo side projects. For fans, this invites two interesting discussions. First, what drives longevity? Playlist placement, viral moments, or genuine repeat listening? Second, what's the role of community behavior? Coordinated streaming versus organic growth? Either way, the numbers show that the music is still being consumed at massive scale day after day. Expect the next wave of fan activity to focus on milestones by track. Which songs are approaching the next billion? Which collaborations have the fastest growth? And how the fandom strategically supports the catalog ahead of future group-era schedules. If you're new to K-pop, think of this as a digital stadium. Streaming totals represent sustained attendance, not a one-night event. BTS member Jin is back in the fan spotlight with a reported #1 result in a K-style fan vote category, reinforcing a pattern K-pop fans recognize. Global communities can create momentum even without a traditional promotion cycle. For fandom audiences, the real story is the mechanism. Fan votes function like a public signal to media outlets, brands, and event organizers. This artist has active demand right now. That can translate into invitations, magazine features, brand interest, and more frequent platform coverage. It also highlights how multi-market K-pop has become. A vote hosted in one region can trend in another, and the conversation moves instantly across languages through reposts, translations, and fanbase accounts. For newer fans, this is a key part of K-pop infrastructure. Achievements are not only about sales and streams, but also about community-driven visibility. The practical question for the next month is what follows? Does this vote tie to an actual trophy presentation, a special feature, or an event appearance? If so, fans typically coordinate content waves, hashtags, clip compilations, and highlight threads that sustain attention beyond a single announcement. In short, today's update isn't only Jin won something. It's a reminder that K-pop is built on participation. Fans don't just consume the product, they operate the distribution network that keeps artists in the algorithmic spotlight. A new viral Jenny moment, photos featuring an oversized bag concept, trended in entertainment coverage today, and it lands at a perfect time. Blackpink's comeback timetable is back in public conversation. For fandom audiences, viral fashion isn't separate from music. It's part of the group's brand system. Viral images keep attention warm between releases, and they can shape the visual identity that fans expect in teaser season. The key detail in today's coverage is the linkage. References to the group's upcoming release schedule have reignited countdown behavior in the fandom. Speculation about concepts, teaser drop windows, and how the group will frame the next era. What to watch next is the official cadence. Agency announcements, teaser posters, tracklist timing, and pre-save campaigns. Blackpink's advantage is global. Fashion and music reinforce each other in a feedback loop, which can amplify reach far beyond core K-pop spaces. For international fans, this is also a reminder to separate confirmed information from hype. Viral posts often trigger rumors about collaborations or surprise drops. Treat only official channels and reputable reports as confirmed. Still, the strategic picture is clear. In 2026's crowded pop landscape, sustained visibility is a competitive weapon. Viral Jenny content keeps Blackpink in the conversation and in the algorithm. So when the music actually drops, the runway is already built.